So thank you everyone for joining. Welcome to React Contributor Days. Can y'all see my slides? Yes, we're there. Okay, good. So I love React Contributor Days because it's such a great way for all of us to get together, especially during these times. We've been doing React or Contributor Days generally for a few years now, but especially kind of during these times, it's so amazing because, you know, the hallway track, the speaker track, this is where you guys get to ask questions and have fun with us and, you know, really get to talk about things that are happening within the ecosystem. So welcome everybody. And thank you again for joining. Wanted to give a quick shout out to This Dot, which is my company. Very exciting place to be, team of about 50 developers right now. Just get to work on some really cool projects and have a lot of fun. So we're hiring. So if you want to come join a really amazing team, definitely give me a shout out. I love all the new friends I meet from the internet that drop into my email inbox. I know Ryan and Ben are both hiring managers here too. I'm sure a few of you others, but don't you love all the like friends you make just by like being hiring managers?
You talk to so many people. It's awesome.
Right? Yeah. I know. I totally love it. So always having to make new friends. So for those of you who aren't familiar, we have a lot of really amazing events coming up. Monthly mentoring is one of my favorites. It's a monthly woman in tech mentoring hosted by a bunch of amazing women, including Katarina, who's also on here. And Daisy, I think Daisy's on here as well. So join for that. You don't have to be a junior, a senior, whatever. It's just a really cool place to like come hang out and chat for an hour. We also have free trainings called JavaScript Marathon. So that is for the week of the September 20th. If you want to just get some free trainings and some really amazing topics, join in on that. Then we have State of GraphQL, where we're going to be talking to folks from the foundation and a bunch of really interesting projects are coming up. So this happens twice a year, and it's just like a really good place to kind of, again, keep up to date with everything that's happening. Vue Contributor Days is happening with Evan Yu and the rest of the Vue core team as well, October 7th. So if you're curious about what's going on there, I just love, again, Contributor Days because there's like so many really amazing things that come out of it every single time. Then we have State of Angular as well, October 14th. So if you all React developers are Vue curious or Angular curious, there's definitely things for y'all to poke your head into. So also we are doing React World Tour. So you can go to reactworldtour.com and check that out. If you want us to come to your city, you can actually request it on the website, reactworldtour.com. And our first stop is actually going to be Austin on October 27th. So yeah, come hang out. Or if you want to speak there, let me know or let Anne-Marie know. My name is Tracy. You can follow me on Twitter at LadyLeet. I love organizing everything community related. And also my other amazing co-host, Sean Day.
Hey, great to be here. I say my name is pronounced like a day of the week, Friday, Saturday, Sean Day. I am a new UI engineer at Netflix. I'm on day 3 officially. I'm in Atlanta, Georgia area. I'm really excited to be here.
Yes, and we are very excited to have you too. Yes, both of us are in Atlanta. Like, what are the chances of that, right?
Right.
Obviously, Atlanta is the place to be. And if all y'all don't know, Render ATL is happening next week as well. So shout out to that. Hopefully we'll see some of y'all there.
All right, so we want to do some quick intros of panelists. So I will let everyone do their own intros and we'll start at the top left and then just work our way down. So just a quick 10-second intro, your name, your title, the company that you work with, or the library that you have created and maintained. Starting with you, Brandon.
Hi, I'm Brandon. I am the creator of Blitz.js and the new founder of flightcontrol.dev.
Yeah. Hey, I'm Evan. I'm a software engineer at Expo. I maintain Expo CLI and create React Native app, and I work on React Native related things. I'll try to slip that into the conversation as much as possible.
What's up, everyone? I'm James. I'm a developer media manager at Auth0, and I teach developers through content.
Hi all, I'm Ryan Burgess. I'm a software engineering manager at Netflix, and thankfully for the community, I have not created a library.
Hello, I'm Katarina Skumpel. I'm a software engineer at Narwhal, and I'm also a GD for Angular Web Technologies in the Google Maps platform, but this information is maybe relevant in this panel. So yeah. Oh, and in terms of what React's work I do, well, I have worked a lot on the React part of the NX. So that's it.
My next, or fantastic, because I didn't know how to follow it, but I'll go next. My name is Wart Peters. I'm from Belgium, Wart in Dutch, but I go by the name Wart in English. And I'm a tech lead at Gatsby.
Hi, everybody. I'm Cassidy Williams. I'm based in Chicago. I'm Director of Developer Experience at Netlify. I'm a part of the React 18 working group, and I really like memes.
Hey y'all, I'm Michael Chan. I go by Chantastic most places on the internet. I host a show called React Podcast. It's on a little bit of a break right now. And I just joined the Chromatic team that creates Storybook and helps developers improve the UX of the web.
I think I got the order wrong. Hi, I'm Lance Weber. I'm a developer at Mayflower in Germany, and I am co-maintainer of Redux Toolkit.
Ramila, did we miss you?
Yeah. Hi, my name is Mela Goodman. I'm a senior software engineer at the New York Times, and I am a part of the React working group as well.
Awesome. And fantastic.
Oh yeah, I missed the order, I think. Sorry, I was in there.
Oh, okay. I'm tripping. Next slide, please. And then starting with Jen. Is Jen? Yeah.
I was worried that I was skipped along with half of the rest of us. So yay for another slide. I'm Jen Luker. I'm a senior staff engineer at Nav. I am known all over the random place for either knitting or accessibility or imposter syndrome or knitting. So yeah, hi. You can see me on Twitter at knitcodemonkey.com. Yeah.
Hi there, y'all. My name is Ben Alegbadu. I'm a principal front-end engineer at Stitch Fix. I work on our design system component library that's in React there, as well as work on a lot of the front-end infrastructure for our React apps. I affectionately call that DevOps. I'm trying to get that name to stick. So if I say it and say it and say it, hopefully it will. And on my website, on my blog, I like to write a lot about React and TypeScript and how those go together.
Hi, I'm Catherine. I'm a software engineer at GitHub. I mostly do Rails over there, but React will always have my heart.
Hi all, I'm David Price. You can internet at the David Price because there's a lot of me out there. I live in Northern California and am one of the co-creators of Redwood.js framework, which happens to use React. A fun fact, this is a redwood cone, but if you turn it upside down, it looks like hops. That's not working very well, is it? So that's, anyway, there's a right side and upside.
And now I have to follow that, David, seriously. So hey everyone, my name is Debbie O'Brien. I'm head developer advocate at Bit. I used to be on the Vue train and I jumped onto the React train. It's been a hell of a ride over the last 6 months. I've had to learn a hell of a lot, but it's been great fun and I'm honored to be part of the working group as well. So yeah, that's me.
And it looks like Nader isn't joining us at the moment, but I'm Colby Fayak. I'm a developer advocate at Applitools, which is a visual testing platform. I do a lot of React educational content and maintain some starters, particularly in the Next.js world.
Awesome. And I know that Chris will be joining us later for the web performance portion of our meeting. Is there anybody that we missed?
Hello, my name is Megan Sullivan. Sorry, my name is Megan Sullivan. I work at Gatsby mainly on our documentation.
And hi, I'm Tomek Słukowski. I'm one of the founding engineers in StackBlitz, the browser IDE. They sometimes say online IDE, but we actually work offline too, so it's a browser IDE. Yep. Hi.
And me, hey everyone, my name is Johnny Burger, and I'm the creator of Remotion, which is a React framework which you can make videos in React.
Did we get everybody?
Right.
Welcome, Megan, Johnny, Tomek, and all of our amazing panelists.
Yes. So giving you guys a quick idea of the schedule. These are a few of the different topics we're going to be discussing. First off, we're going to have some community and library updates. Then we'll go into React 18 and the working group. Again, for those of you who are on YouTube, definitely drop questions in the chat so that we can get to them and answer them. We'll do a quick bio break as well after that conversation, and then we'll come back to web performance and core web vitals, which will be awesome. So again, we want you all to let us know what you think. A lot of the panelists are also in the chat and everything like that, but this is a great time to ask questions. So I think let's get to library and community updates. Again, 2 to 3 minutes each for everybody, starting with Debbie.
Woohoo! Okay, I just want to give you a quick update on Bit. So I've been working there now for 6 months. And just if you haven't heard of it, Bit is a way of creating component-driven development. So you're going to build components that basically normally we build apps, right? And then all our components are stuck in that app, and then we build another app, and then we go to copy and paste those components into the other app, and then we go crazy, right? So this is a way to build your components, and your components can live wherever. They live in the cloud, and they can be then installed into any app, into your Next.js app, your Gatsby app, your Next app, or your React app, or your React Native app, because we also support React Native. And it means then you can have consistency across all your applications. And it's really easy to use because, I've built a lot of developer tools to make it easier. So we've got some great new generator tools out there now. So you can actually just go Bit, new, React, and you get a new workspace. And then you've got some demo components in there as well. And then you can just do Bit, new, React component, and you get a new React component. Don't get too excited. It's just a div with a text inside it. You have to actually do the work yourself. But it gives you the starter files with the documentation, the testing, and everything, so you can have a really good user experience. And then you can create great components that you can share with your teammates, with everyone else. And it's just, it's a really good platform for working and putting components first. So I'd love you all to test it out, try it out, and have fun building components. Thanks.
Yes, it's definitely a really cool tool. I've been dying to get deeper into that. Also love the homepage. So if you guys go to, it's bit.dev, is that right, Debbie?
Yeah, correct. We're building a whole new homepage. I'm going to be streaming how I'm building the homepage, so you can come and laugh at me, which is great fun though, because I'm learning React as I'm building things. So it's, it's interesting. And we're releasing new docs as well soon. So kind of expect, docs are hard. So they're going to be out there soon. They'll be better and improved. So yeah, watch out for that too.
Yeah. All right. Next up, we have Tomek giving us an update about StackBlitz, one of my favorite tools.
Thanks. Yeah, so earlier this year we've introduced web component for web. We've introduced web containers, which is this new technology that allows us to basically run Node natively in a browser. That's not a VM, just a browser. So that opened a whole lot of possibilities. So I have a bunch of updates. I'll try to run through it smoothly. And actually, I've prepared a page, our RCD, like React Contributor Days .netlify.app, so you can read through all those updates for the day. But yeah, web containers running a Node in a browser. So for example, we have a nice React Server components demo because you have a backend now in the browser. That you can run live in StackBlitz. There is a node.new website that allows you to start Node project in literally 2 seconds. There's Next New for your next fans. We've recently enabled native support for ES modules, so you can run them in Node too. And this was just in, we also support Vite, also known as Vite sometimes. So there's Vite.new, Vite.new/React, Vite.new/React.ts if you want to run it with TypeScript. And tomorrow we'll be announcing minimal support for SQLite in browser too. So that will unlock some new capabilities. So far we've been having a lot of server-side tools like Docusaurus, like 11t, Adaptas for the documentation and examples, but now we'll be able to support more backend frameworks too.
Amazing. Yeah, if you haven't checked out Stackblitz, definitely check that out. Wow, I just really love all the updates and all the community projects. So like another one of my favorites, Brandon from Blitz.js. Well, Brandon, I don't know if you're my favorite, but Blitz is. I'm just kidding. You're also my favorite, one of my favorites. I don't play favorites. Anyways, Brandon, Blitz, let's hear about it.
Awesome. Yeah. So we are continuing to see awesome adoption and growth with Blitz. We just passed 2,000 members in our Discord like this week, so that's super awesome. We're seeing a lot of more larger companies adopting it. Graph CMS came on as a sponsor recently. They're starting some Blitz projects. There's an Australian energy company that has their entire user-facing property using Blitz. So that's really awesome. We are seeing about 400 new Blitz projects being created every single day, which I think is just kind of wild. And we're not even to 1.0 yet, but we're making great progress toward 1.0. And the latest Blitz Canary release is a very significant release because it fully switches over to the Next.js fork implementation. And so this gets rid of the old sort of hacky custom compiler setup we had. And now it's a much more first class experience. And so it eliminates a bunch of kind of weird bugs because of how we were doing things and has a more faster performance and development. So that's really awesome. And lastly, if you want free stickers, we are still sending out free Blitz stickers. So go to blitzjs.com/stickers and put in your address and we will email you 3 different Blitz stickers. That's all for me.
Those are awesome updates. And thank you for ending it on some freebies because everybody loves freebies. Next is David Price with Redwood Updates.
Yeah, so the first one is we are in second place for being Tracy's favorite. That's our biggest update, but we're moving up the ladder, so that's good. Thank you, Tracy. I had to put you a little bit on the spot, but Redwood.js is a full stack integrated JavaScript framework. We happen to use React, which is why I'm here, and GraphQL, but we integrate a whole bunch of other things. We have first-class integration for Storybook and Jest. So there's a testing suite front end to back out of the box, and a lot of other things. Redwood is geared towards solving the problems for teams and team process over time. So we're heavily focused on DX and workflows, as well as deployment workflows. You can go multi-client, you can go serverless, the traditional architecture and back again. And here's the thing we don't say very much. We are at a state where, although the release candidate isn't quite here, I think Brandon might beat us. You did beat us to that, so you might beat us to the V1. But Redwood is at a great place and a stable place for you to try it now. So meaning the full integrated DX is ready to go. You could fire up a Redwood project now. You could mock your components and all of your data inside Redwood. It's called cells using Storybook right out of the gate. So you can actually mock up an interactive state and then work backwards into data modeling and using Prisma to create your migrations in your database schema. So the workflow is there and ready to go. And that's what we've been trying to get done for a long time. We have one major breaking change that's coming which is we switched our GraphQL server over to the Guild's Envelop Helix. And if you don't know the Guild, they're fantastic. We have a great collaborative relationship with them. And there's some fun things we're going to get to do with GraphQL now, including built-in defaults, security out of the box. I'm talking GraphQL, I know, and also API caching, which will be fun. So yeah, the tutorial is a great place to learn Redwood. And if you want stickers, first get Blitz's stickers, but go to redwoodjs.com/stickers because you get a couple. You can use one as a Redwood cone. You can flip another one over, make it a hops flower. And that is all.
I was so close to making the joke that you didn't have free stickers, so that's why you weren't better. But you got the free stickers. So
Blitz's stickers are pretty cool. I mean, if I always say there's a reason why there's like the favorite, it's Blitz's stickers are pretty great.
Freebies are the key to my heart, as with so many others. So thank you for that. Thank you for your contributions to the tech community. Next is Evan with React Native updates.
Hey, yeah, so I'm going to talk about Expo, which is what I work on along with React Native. Expo is a comprehensive framework for building robust native apps and shipping them to the App Store. Think of it kind of like Vercel or Gatsby for React Native. We provide like a reusable runtime for React Native, or you can download it from the App Store and you don't need to like build the native code. You just download the JavaScript, not unlike a browser, perhaps. Can't say that directly though. And we also have a hosting service for sending JS over the air, and your users download it so you can send like quick updates to your users instantly. It is unclear where it ranks in Tracy's favorite frameworks, possibly number 3 if we don't have stickers yet, but we will work on it. We also just released a thing called EAS Build, which is a build service where you can build your native apps in the cloud with arbitrary native code. Think of that kind of like when you run Now and it just sends your thing to the cloud and builds it and then it's like ready to go. But for native apps, so like one command, iOS, Android apps, super dope. And then another command to submit it to the App Store, Play Store, and then continuously just keep it going. So it's easier than ever to make native apps. We recently rolled out support for building custom clients in the cloud with custom native code. So if you don't have like Xcode or Android Studio, you don't have access to a Mac, like lots of users, you can just send your code to the cloud, builds it, sends it back down and back to going. So you don't need to know anything about native development for custom native projects. We'll also be upgrading to React Native 64, which has React 17 support. We are a little behind. And then it has like Hermes on iOS, which is a custom JavaScript engine, supports bytecode, and lots of other great stuff like bundler improvements in JSI. And I'm also looking for people to join my team. So if you're familiar with like bundlers and JavaScript, Node.js, feel free to reach out to me on Twitter at Bacon Bricks or at Expo, and we can, you can help make native apps fast or something.
I love it. And Expo is one of my favorites. So just because it's really cool. And if you're interested in building any native apps for Mac, it's been a lifesaver. So that's awesome. So moving from Mr. Bacon to Mr. Burger, Johnny Burger with Remotion updates.
Thank you. So Remotion, as a reminder, it's a framework for creating MP4 videos in React. And the most recent update that we had is that we went one step back and also added support for still images so that you can pass some data to an API and get back a still image. We figured that would be an easy thing to add since we basically just had to go one step backwards. And one thing that we are working on now, which is going to be one of the next features, is that we are trying to solve the problem of videos being really slow to render. I think in general, video rendering is really slow. So what we are doing is we are building a framework where you send your React video to AWS Lambda, and then we launch another 100 Lambda functions, which are each going to render like 1 second of video. After it's done, we're gonna take all the chunks of video, put it back together into one video, combine it. And that way we are like trying to build the fastest video renderer that is out there by just like spawning up really a lot of computing power in a short amount of time. So stay tuned for that. And I think somebody also mentioned a few companies which are now starting to use it. In our case, which I'm really excited about, is that a major American sports league is now starting to experiment with remotion. And yeah, really looking to see what comes out of it. That would be awesome.
You're not talking about who the sports league is?
Maybe I should not say it explicitly yet.
I'm just joking. I'm just joking. Thank you for that. Next is Ward with Gatsby and React 18 updates.
So Gatsby is trying to become the platform for the web, and we have been working hard on our own hosting solution powered with Fastly to make Gatsby ready for the future, because we've been very compared with static site generation and being static, and we want to move to a more dynamic world with like SSR or deferred static generation. So we're working really hard to get to Gatsby v4 to make static basically scale endlessly, because now we've been having issues with scaling to 1 million pages, and we are trying to solve that with our own hosting solution, but also with changing bits in the framework. And we're shipping things like parallel query running, where you basically get 40% faster build speeds when you have larger sites. We have our own GraphQL engine, that's our data layer. And you can just plug in. So if you have a WordPress site, you can install the Gatsby source WordPress, and then you can start with your headless journey through Gatsby. And we've been supporting React 18 for, I guess, 2 months now. So when you install the React Add Next or the React DOM Add Next version, we will automatically start in async mode, so you can use all the new features that are available. And we are building features on top of it. Like if you know Gatsby, we have like use static query and page queries. We want to move to use queries so that you can use queries everywhere in your application and goodies like that. And we have an event next week called Gatsby Camp, where we'll be sharing a lot about V4 and new things in React 18. And my dog tries to get into my room.
I was wondering what was going on back there. Understandable. So thank you for that, Ward. Next, we have Lens with an update on React and Redux 8.
Yeah, like first thing that has happened in the last 3 months or so is that our co-maintainer Mark Erickson has written new tutorials or new pages for the tutorials. Like if you want to get started on RTK query, those are now in the Redux Essentials tutorial, chapter 8 and 9. And it took me like 2 hours to review them. So you probably have a lot of stuff to go through there. Apart from that, there has been some interesting development with how React works with external state managers. So I'm trying to tell the story here. I think a month ago, Daishi Kato, who does like 1 million of libraries, like he's in Zustand, he's on Valtio and Chotai, and he released one of those and had an API change in there because he wanted to use the old new mutable use mutable source hook that was going to be integrated in the new React. And he had an API change that you needed to have a selector that's referentially stable. So you always had to use callback in there. And nobody really noticed until Dominic brought from React Query brought the thing up on Twitter. And we were like, wait, we need to have those stable now, and started discussing, and the whole thing went over into the React work group. They continue talking there. It's super interesting. You learn a lot reading those topics. And in the end, the React team really listened. We talked to them, And they actually scrapped the whole idea of use mutable source, as far as I'm aware. And they are adding a new hook to React 18, which is use sync external store, which will make like implementations of, I think, most external state managers binding part. So like React Redux, for example, the use selector hook will come down to a few bytes, because that's essentially what those libraries need. And the same goes for Zustand and all of them. So that's been a really great development. Mark Erickson has already sat down and is working on a React Redux 8, which will use that. The React team is going to ship a shim, so it will also work with React 17 and I think even with React 16. So all those libraries can just start using that and add that shim to the dependencies, and we can essentially like use the technology of tomorrow. Our libraries will all go a lot smaller and everything will work with React 18. So we're super excited about that, and cooperation on this has been great, really, really great. And we're super happy that it's playing out this way, because before, with use mutable source, I think most implementations would have had to add a lot of own code to make it work in their way. And with what they came up now, I think that will solve most problems for almost everyone. So really great job there.
That's amazing. Awesome. Congrats. Thank you for the great update. And I think a lot of what you said is a great segue into the next update, which will also segue into the next portion of this, which is React 18. And Chantastic will talk first about his experience with the working group before we open up for discussion about React 18 and the updates. So Chantastic.
Hey. So we have a lot of React working group people here, and so I don't want to talk for all of them. So I'm excited we're going to have a bunch of time to hear from more of them. But I do want to encourage anyone who's listening right now to just kind of check out some of the discussions that are happening on that repo. And I can tell you, if you haven't been there before, it's just github.com/reactwg, and that'll get you as far as you need to go. Everything's in the discussions pane there. Now, I think something that's really fun to see, and I guess probably the biggest update, is just that it feels like things are kind of trending in the right direction. So there's a lot of documentation effort that is happening under the scenes right now. There has been, I think, as Lenz was saying, a lot of actual work happening in how to integrate existing apps that use, Redux into this kind of new world of React 18 and all the concurrent APIs. So there's a lot of exciting stuff kind of leading to what I think will be a very exciting React Conf, which right now they're preparing a React Conf, which is very exciting, remote. So yeah, I mean, it won't be as fun as in person, but I'm really excited about all the things that will be kind of announced and all of these efforts that I hope will kind of get a big, spotlight during that time. One other thing that I'd probably point you to, or two other things, is there's a new React profiler. So I think reading up on that would be helpful. I think you'd probably learn a lot there. And yeah, I think, as from the content side of things, I just started a new thread today. Just kind of asking, as we go into, fall holiday season, as Advent calendars and all that kind of stuff start getting, produced and thought through, how can we start sharing the news and how to get people up to date on React 18? So hopefully we'll have a lot more information on, how your favorite content creators can start preparing you for a React 18 migration. But yeah, that's about it. Go to the repo to learn more.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, and perfect segue, like I said, was into the React 18 portion of things. So Tracy, should I just move on into it?
Yeah, go ahead. Mm-hmm.
Okay, great. So as you probably know, React 18 is the next version of React. It's currently in alpha version, available for download for anybody right now publicly. As Chantastic mentioned, there are a number of us as part of this React 18 working group. So if you haven't heard of the React 18 working group, React has approached this release a little bit differently, where they've put together a panel of different educators, developers, library maintainers, React core developers to have input and ask questions, provide feedback, and even have kind of a significant impact on the way that this release is, what's incorporated in this release by feedback, collaboration, a lot of which you've seen in the updates that we've presented today. So as Chantastic mentioned, a bunch of us are part of this React 18 working group. So I wanted to open up the floor for some discussion before we get into the actual features of React 18. For those who are part of the working group, what has your experience been like? And then for everybody, what are your thoughts on this approach to a release for a library?
Hello. I'm very excited about the working group just because it's been amongst some of the most transparent times for the React team. And so we actually know what things are happening. We can ask them questions and stuff. And I think before they would release certain features to a very small group of like friends of the React team. And it worked out to get those features out there, but it kind of blindsided community members. And so by doing it this way, where it's more in public with still trusted people in the community and a much larger, more diverse group of people in the community, it's been great to see because everyone knows what's coming. They don't entirely know how they'll implement it and everything, but they know what's coming. And it's been exciting to see the React team move towards that.
Agree. Ward?
I also think that the change to the whole async concurrent mode pieces is like open up their eyes that it's not going to be as easy as they might have thought or wanted to be, because so many libraries are not made for it. And I think this is a great way for the community, but also for React itself to learn and adapt. And I think we've already been seeing that with the React Working Group, that hooks change, unstable features might change, and basically pushing us to try these things and see what we find in the wild, which is great.
Yeah, absolutely. Chantastic.
You are muted, Michael.
Oh no, so many buttons. I couldn't lower my hand and unmute myself at the same time. I just wanted to give Cassidy an extra shout out because, you know, we were in one of those kind of like secret, like, you know, groups of, you know, people, you know, being asked like certain React things like together. And she really had this vision for like, hey, we need to like involve more people. We need to like make this public. We need to, and really started that conversation. And again, to, you know, what Lens was saying earlier, the React team has been super receptive to feedback, even when it kind of doesn't make them look very great. And I just want to, I guess, like reiterate like how open they have been to feedback and collaboration. And I feel like the React working group is such a great example of how they're really trying to like not just hear but listen to the community.
Definitely, yeah, and I will second your kudos to Cassidy because she's an amazing teacher, as many of the folks on the React core team are, like Dan Abramov, Rick Hanlon, like just incredible teachers. And so the documentation was amazing and very comprehensive, but still people had questions, and there were things about like, okay, maybe I'm not very familiar with suspense, or what does automatic batching really mean? And people like Cassidy, just before it even came out, were just like, all right, let me explain it in human terms. I'll explain to you why it's important, all of the things that you need to know, how it's going to impact your library. And Cassidy really took just a bigger community sense, and like, this is what the people need, this is how the people need to see it, and took the action to put it out there. So we appreciate you, Cassidy.
Oh, you're gonna make me cry, friends. Thank you.
Debbie.
Yeah, pretty much what everyone else just said. But seriously, like just, you know, and obviously I'm new to the React community, and to be able to come into something like the working group and just have this initiative of like, hey, look, we're trying to release this. This is what we're going to do. And what questions do you have? What problems? And how can we help you? And the explanations, like if you have not opened that discussions tab, you really should, because the explanations on there are insane. The amount of work that they're putting in, that the React team are putting in, as well as the working group, to kind of explain and help each other out. And it definitely makes it less scary. It's not like, oh my God, React 18 is coming out and what do I need to learn? And it's just like, hey, there's loads of time. Take your time and have a read through this. And, you know, step by step, you're going to understand the new features. You can play around with it. And I think it's just a fantastic way to get a new thing out there. So really great job for the React team.
Definitely. Yeah. Another thing that I love that came out of it was Sylvia Vargas put together or started this PR, or it was a GitHub Actions page or something. Explain to me like I'm 5. And so it was all the different technical terms, even ones that aren't new to React 18. It's just general technical terms that were in part of the documentation were just broken down. And so there's a title with the term that was raised. Anybody could ask the question, like, what does this mean? And then anybody could answer it. And you have like Dan Abramoff in there with his whiteboard stuff and like explaining things, breaking things down in a really human.
The mother on the telephone.
Yes, yes. So
I love that example.
Don't be scared. Poke around the documentation.
Also good to say that I feel like this is like huge because, you know, I'm a part of so many of the different framework communities, right? And everybody has their own different little ways of how they get community involved. But I really feel like this has been like a, I don't know, a blind spot, maybe not a blind spot, but whatever you want to call it, something missing within the React community. And I think like having you all be a part of that working group, being able to represent what's coming up, having more voices, having more energy out there is really building like a more inclusive future for React. And I know a lot of people also like look at, you know, the working group now, they're like, how do I become these people? So like, how do people get involved? Like, how do you start contributing in that way if you're interested?
I think now is a really excellent time for people who want to do this kind of stuff because it's all so new. So if you do read all of this documentation and get to know all of these things, especially with Michael's post on education and course material stuff, pay attention to what the React team says, because if we know that some of those APIs are solid now, you can take it, really try to understand it and start making content on it now and be one of the first people to actually produce it. And these early releases where everything is alpha, it's a really tough learning opportunity sometimes because everything will be changing and there isn't a lot of solid footing. But as things change, you can kind of understand how things change a little bit. And you're really at that low level where by the time it's actually released entirely fully to the public, you could be one of the few experts on this new update, where a lot of people at companies, they can't be looking at all of this alpha stuff because they need to have something that is solid, secure, already released. They're not going to be updating to React 18 for a long time. And so you as an individual are able to be that resource for them and make the blog posts, the courses, the videos, all kinds of content fairly early if you take the opportunity to do so.
That's a great answer. Ryan, you have something to say?
Yeah, I wanted to follow up maybe for the working group. Kudos to everyone being involved. I think it's great to get that diversity of thought and people jumping in and giving their opinions on it earlier. And I know kind of following up is like asking people to join. What for the working group, what are you missing maybe? Like what are certain types of viewpoints that you may be missing, like large companies, small companies? Like it might be helpful to kind of talk to who's the right people that you want to join.
That's a good question. I'll pose that to the group. What is missing from the working group right now?
Time. Just that's my easiest answer.
It's grant you time though, Cassidy.
Come on, you can. We're technical. That's honestly my like joking but kind of serious answer. I think it would be great to continue having more people so that we have more eyes on things and thus more time dedicated to it. I think the React team is trying to figure out that fine balance of bringing in so many people that they can get a lot of diverse perspectives and stuff, but not so many people that their DMs are just trashed and they can't keep up with everything. And it's a hard balance. I don't fully know how to answer this question because of that.
Yeah, and I'll take a swag at it, but when I came in, I was intentionally looking for diversity in everything, like race, gender, everything, and company size, people's followings on Twitter, because they reached out on Twitter too, to at least to me. And there are people like Cassidy who have I don't know, 1 million like Beyonce level followers. And then people like me who probably at the time had like 100 followers, right? And there was just a lot of diversity. So I was very happy to see the levels of diversity that were in there. And I think when you approach things from an intentional perspective to get people from all backgrounds and things like that, and then also a good representation from different libraries, people that it could possibly affect, you do get that great diversity of thought and very, what's the word? It's just a very well-rounded collection of perspectives to that are put in the pot to collaborate with. So I'm happy with it. That's my answer.
I'm going to put Beyonce on my Twitter bio from now on.
You heard it.
But I do appreciate, like you said, that they didn't go for a lot of the obvious people for this working group. Like there's some people who maintain some very prominent React libraries that were consulted, but were purposely not a part of the working group because they wanted more voices in there, because otherwise those people, as great as they are, some of them are truly wonderful people. I should say all of them. They're wonderful people for contributing all of this stuff to the community. But if you keep providing the same opportunities to the exact same people, then you aren't hearing all of the voices. And so I echo you, Shande, in saying that they were really intentional about it, and it was really good to see.
It tends to develop a bubble at that point, that you get so wrapped up in how your libraries work or how the deep technical portions work that it can very quickly lose perspective on what the average dev needs React for, right? So you can get stuck and muddled in those details. And at the same time, I feel like just because content exists doesn't mean you can't add your voice to that content. I can go through 15 different people, 15 different talks, read the documentation on 10 different days, and it's the one person who says something in just the right way that helps me understand it. So just because content exists doesn't mean that you can't add to it.
I agree completely with that. And then I also, just to add on to that, I'll stop talking. I know I'm talking a little bit too much, but by that bubble is very, very real. And the React team themselves, when again, it was our small group before the working group came out, the React team themselves, they don't really write React often. They're busy creating React, but they don't actually use the library themselves. And so sometimes we would ask them questions and they'd be like, oh, that's a concern for people, but isn't this obvious? And it was because they're in their little bubble where they're not actually using the framework themselves. And so it's good to get a wide variety for that reason. Otherwise, you're just not going to know what you're building for.
Love that. Jenna, did you have another question? No. Okay.
Nope, I'm good.
Okay. Does anybody else have anything to add? I see David and Michael want to chat. Do we want to switch gears, answer your questions? David, I'll let you talk first.
I don't have to talk. I do love to talk. Don't get me wrong. But do we have time?
This is your space. Yep, go ahead.
Okay, so all right. First off, working group, thank you. I just wanted to echo there's two things, Cassidy, you just said. When you're building the framework and not necessarily getting to use a framework, it is so hard to have that visibility. So that feedback loop is so important. And two things I noticed when I was reading through the the announcements and the plan going forward, and I just assumed this was because of the working group, is one, I thought the decision to do gradual adoption for concurrent mode, like that's huge as a framework developer for us, right? Because there's so many downstream implications of a breaking change like that. So I just thought, oh, the working group must have been the effect of the working group. And I also feel like some of the ergonomics of some of the components and things that I've seen, the server-side rendering, it seems to have changed, but it feels a lot more approachable. And I thought, oh, that must be the working group. So is that true? Are those assumptions true, that it's like that kind of feedback loop has driven some of those changes? Or I don't know, just claim that it was, because hats off, well done. I want it to be the case.
I personally did literally all of that. Thank you, David, for all of the credit.
And this is why you're the Beyonce of tech.
It's gonna stick. It's gonna stick. I love it.
I think, if I may, I think that honestly, I would say that a lot of that, and this is just my understanding of what I've seen, a lot of that is driven by Facebook's needs. So because, first and foremost, they were trying to solve the needs of migrating the Facebook code base. A lot of the thing, like, I feel like React 18 is going to be like a fairly straightforward release for a lot of people, because there were a lot of, Facebook is a huge code base. And so the lessons that they learned migrating their own code to the APIs will get the benefit of, in terms of like a fairly straightforward migration. I think that, there's, create root changes pretty dramatically, but then, like you said, there's that, David, there's that kind of progressive adoption of the concurrent APIs. So if you are not on an experimental release right now, you really should just be able to kind of pick up and go. And there's very like minor things that changed. I think mostly with like batching is kind of like the big thing. And then like the callback on like React root. If you are on like a stable release, it should be a fairly straightforward thing. And I think that, as much as, any one of us would like to take credit for that, I think that it's largely the kind of Herculean effort of kind of creating something that will work on a massive code base, and get people to actually like migrate to the new version.
Yeah, it totally makes sense. I think that's, yeah. Again, these are all really healthy signs, right? And gets me really excited about React. And just the last part of that, it also indicates that they're aware that the React's place in the ecosystem is changing, because the ecosystem has changed, right? Like libraries aren't standalone anymore, right? There's so much integration that happens. So anyway, I'm really encouraged, and who would have known? I'd say downright excited.
That's the way to be, David. And that was a great question. Lens.
I want to say, like, when the React working group came out, I was like a little bit sad, because of course you want to take part in that. You want to like read this thing and then ask a question beyond that. But I do absolutely appreciate what you just said about the diversity and people using it a different way, because maintaining Redux and like being in the chat a lot and talking to people, every week someone comes along and uses that library in a way that I've never thought about. And the same thing goes for React, of course. And I mean, it's sad, of course, not to have the opportunity to be part of all that discussion. But on the other hand, this is such a powerful resource. Before, you had to follow the right people on Twitter and read the right message the Twitter algorithm showed you at the right time. You could read all GitHub issues of React, because like every 500th issue is like this hidden gem of super cool information, where a React developer really like gave the explanation of the century, and those explanations are great, but they get lost. They are somewhere in that heap of stuff. And I think React started that with the RFC process, which is also very cool, but which also had like this little bit of a stalling feeling, because people put their RFC there, non-React contributors discussed it, and then for a long time it didn't really feel like nothing happened. And it's not only the working group. They are currently like adding an explanation on the RFC process of what you can expect if you take part in that RFC process. Like, yeah, we won't come back to you tomorrow. Yes, it will take time. Maybe your idea is just not high on the priority. And recently, Dan had, like, I think an incredible evening of productivity where he like started the first post explaining why he hadn't answered for a long time in there. And it was like, every of your suggestions really would require me to write a day on a perfect answer. Like, he didn't want to answer because he didn't want to answer short. And then he was like, okay, but these are piling up. So he started writing answers. And I think a Dan Abramov 20-minute answer is something most of us couldn't pull out of their head in like 3 days. Like, going through all those answers, a detailed, this would work because of that, and this would not work. Like, even alone just clearing my inbox for the next 3 days and reading those has been an amazing learning experience. So it's not only the working group that is opening up there, it's also like they're trying that on the RFC side too. They are trying to get the community on board, and it's amazing. Like, just hats off, and I'm a big fan of that.
To back that up, you can only drink from the fire hose of information, whether it be Twitter or RFCs, so much before your brain melts. So you don't have to know everything. That's why we have a community of people. Don't forget to use the resources and the friends and the documentation as needed. Yes, it's fun to read it, but take breaks too.
So true. Lindsay touched on so many great points, and I agree 100% with everything that you just said. Dan is a gem, and he is just incredibly brilliant, like everybody on this call, but he processes things in a way that I haven't, at a level I haven't reached yet. I aspire to, but totally relatable. Romello, what were you about to ask?
No, I was gonna kind of build on to that. I was like, yeah, and I think like the best part about the working group is like really seeing an investment in open source, but also like an investment in community. You know, like seeing people who like used to maintain these libraries go and work on the core technology over the years, but even like the working group, like it's a departure from what I've seen in the past. And like I'm really hopeful that in the future that like these companies that make trillions of dollars with these technologies that they maintain, like will continue to embrace the people who are actually building the community and like continue to support them and see this as real work, you know, because like a lot of maintainers are working for free, or maybe they're like building a personal brand, but it's like this work is valuable and this work is like really good and like it really can shape people's entire careers, because Dan wrote a response back to you, or Cassidy like took time to like explain a concept to you, and it's like can really change like people's entire lives and like really like their whole trajectory. So it's just nice to see.
Yeah, that's a great point. It shows that they understand that they have a big responsibility to the community, and they're using their powers for good by leveraging all of the different voices in the community to make sure that whatever they release, what's good for Facebook, isn't negatively impacting the rest of the community. So yeah, I think it's a great move.
And again, is the mom voice.
Mom voice.
People like Dan and Cassidy are ridiculously amazing, yes. However, don't forget the fact that on the Venn diagram, you have huge amounts of knowledge that they do not. So don't put them on pedestals. They're still people, they're still humans, they still have weaknesses, and you have strengths. So that's why we need to work together.
There's such a good balance of personalities on this call. Jen, I love it. You need the emotional boost sometimes. I appreciate that. Thank you for that.
Like I said, the mom voice, reality check.
I'm right there with you. Love that. Does anybody else have any comments on the working group? Okay, we have about 8 minutes left in this section. The next question I would pose, we probably only have time for 1 or 2 answers, is of the React 18 updates that you're familiar with, which is your favorite one and why is it automatic batching? I muted myself. Go ahead. What is your favorite new feature?
My favorite, and it's going to sound really boring compared to probably everybody else's answers, is the fact that the upgrade is going to be very, very easy for people. Like the fact that you can change like your root API, and if you don't want to use any of the new methods, you don't have to. You can just change your root, and then that's it, and you have a lot of the advantages that React 18 provides. And I think that's truly so powerful for so many people, and it just for upgrading a code base, that's enormous, because I'm sure any of us who has worked on a professional code base before has seen some really old code where you're just like, I know we need to upgrade this library, but it's going to be such a pain. The fact that you can do that incremental thing that we talked about earlier by just updating the root and then doing other things later is enormous.
100%. Ward?
I think what's most interesting to me is the pipe to node writable and basically allowing suspense and all the async tasks during server rendering. So you basically render your HTML at server time stream-wise or at like from a file, and then you don't need, then when it hydrates, you don't need a flicker effect on the HTML. So basically what it happens now when you have a suspense boundary, you would fall back to the fallback prop, like a loading spinner or anything, which wasn't great. And now it's possible to have the HTML already there, and then hydration, like downloading another file or downloading some APIs can come later, but the HTML will still be there. And I think that will open up a lot of doors for other features, for example, server components, but also just the foundation of that I am very excited about.
Same. Ryan?
So I'm going to say like batch rendering is pretty exciting. I will agree with you, Sean Day, but I'm with Cassidy. It is exciting that you can upgrade really easily and opt into what you want. Being at large companies, it's like you're behind like by a lot because it takes so much to upgrade. And maybe you're not even the one that upgrades it. It might be a dedicated like platform team or someone in charge of doing that. And you're not allowed to take advantage of those APIs until it's updated, obviously. But it's a slog to do. And React has been a slog in the past to update. So I was really, really happy to see that. I'm a little skeptical. I will say that it's going to take, I think on their blog, they said in an afternoon. I'm curious on how big that code base is that they're doing the tests on, but I am excited about that in general. That's the right direction.
Agreed. I guess we'll see. Just throw it out there, upgrade everything to concurrent, and let's go see what happens. Lens.
I have to say I'm probably like that kid that always wants what they can't have. So I'm looking for suspense for data fetching, and if you look in the working group, it says, yeah, that will come later, and I'm like, I want to have that now. So I'm really, really looking forward to that. But yeah, the clear upgrade path, and also not only making sure that React upgrades clearly, but that all big libraries are in place to support React 18 before it even comes out. That's so much better than when hooks came out and the libraries all had to figure it out for over half a year or so.
Yeah, definitely. Michael.
Yeah, I was gonna say something really similar to Lens. Like I, as someone who really likes simplicity, like I was playing with Svelte for the first time. Like I know that, like heresy, right? Like you know, in this, I was playing for the Svelte the first time this week, right? Or this month, and I was blown away at how clear the path is to like first fetch in the kind of like tutorials of like how you can get to data in a svelte way and have it just make sense and be readable. Like this is not the case in React at all, right? Like you have to install a library and then it's a bunch of like weird like destructuring and like in component stuff, right? And so I am so excited for suspense because it's just one more step in like how to get to your first fetch in a Reacty way. and we're not there yet. Like, React Fetch is still like in process, but like we are one step closer, and I'm super, super excited to see that, to see like just a first class example of that in React. We don't have it yet. And I think it's so easy to forget that we don't have it because we're so used to doing it in a myriad of other ways. But getting closer to that, I'm really excited about.
So good. So good. Ward, did you have something to add?
I want to just add something to what Ryan said, and maybe I misunderstood it a little bit, but we've been upgrading some clients of us to React 18 on our own website just by switching create root, and haven't seen any problems so far. So it just took from a gateway point, we just had to add the new React packages, and then it just worked. But there's probably some websites or applications where there might be some changes necessary, but like if you follow React to the letter, like doing all the things with hooks correctly, which is difficult, I don't think you're going to have any issues. But if you have some like maybe things that they didn't anticipate or that you shouldn't do, you might have some issues, but we haven't seen any issues so far, which is awesome.
Or just works scares me. It never just works.
For website, at least it did. For the static site pieces,
That's good.
I can't
I'm excited.
for the application sites.
Ryan plans out the next 6 months of upgrade, and he's like, "Holy crap! It took me 30 minutes."
That's
Never
exciting.
mind.
I'm down for that. Can take a holiday after that.
Heck
Great.
yes.
But you bill a few weeks instead of half an hour.
I think it's better the way that you're doing it is just planning for the worst and then just be surprised if things turn out better than expected. Hey, Evan.
Hey, I am super excited about suspense cache control in React 18. It's like not super talked about, but it's pretty cool. It's all like, prefixed with the unstable underscore, so it's good. And this, like, for anyone who doesn't know what it is, it's like you can define how a suspense component like caches its data. Currently, I think it's just like some naive global data caching system. So you can specify that like certain data maybe works like a service worker, like stale while revalidating. So maybe it's like it never fetches, it always uses what's on disk. And then like it fetches in the background. And then the next time you load the component, then it renders it. So like a lot of cool things like that, which are just going to be really great. Like it's unclear, like I guess there'll be cool ways to use it in web. Like I think the React 3 Fiber people have talked about how they're going to use it in web. But in native, it's really sweet because like a native app is like bundle splitting works totally different because you don't have like these pages where every page can just be automatically split. It's like kind of like if you have one page and every screen is kind of living in that same page. So you need like new ways to think about caching your data and storing it. And in the next version of React Native, I think we'll have like async bundle splitting, which has taken us a while to get to, but we're working on it. Hopefully it's in there like pretty soon. And so we can combine that with like cache control and like native file system APIs. So you can do things kind of like service workers, but in native. So maybe every screen has its own type of cache on it. And then you can have like a global cache for different assets that you want to update like all the time. And there's just like so many new possibilities with it. It's really exciting. So I'm super hyped to get to like play with it some more.
I didn't even realize all that. That's awesome. Yeah, that's really great. Thank you for that, Evan. I know we've gone just a little bit past our time. Does anybody else have anything that they wanted to add in terms of updates, things they're really excited about? Okay, so what we'll do next is we'll have a quick bio break, and then we'll come back on East Coast time, it'll be 1:30. So in about 8 minutes.
See you all in just a little bit. All right. A bunch of us are just coming back. Welcome back from the break. Okay, so I think we're ready to get started again. Chris is joining us for this portion of the conversation as well. Welcome, Chris. Do you want to introduce yourself? We did intros at the beginning, so maybe a quick 10-second intro.
Sure. Hi, my name is Christopher Baxter. I work at Google. I work at Google Search on page experience and Core Web Vitals. I'm really excited to be here.
Nice. We're excited to have you. And everyone else, of course, welcome back.
All right, so let's get things kicked off. For the next 20 minutes, we'll be talking about web performance and Core Web Vitals. So I'm really excited that Chris is here. I've heard him speak, so I'm going to put him on the spot and just give a speech. Like, just go ahead and stand up and tell us everything we need to know. Give us our little CS degree on Core Web Vitals. I think the question I want to start with is, what are Core Web Vitals and how does it relate to web performance?
Yeah, it's a good question. So Core Web Vitals, and I want to be really clear, the Core Web Vitals group is something that the Chrome team is really primarily responsible for. I worked in search, and so to me, the Core Web Vitals is fascinating and interesting, but I don't necessarily define the Core Web Vitals metrics themselves. So with that caveat out of the way, this is how I understand Core Web Vitals. Core Web Vitals are a set of metrics that are defined and created to try to find a common way to define page experience type metrics across the web. So they're defined and trying to be something that is equally actionable for every kind of document across the web, not just a specific format or a specific set of technologies that are being used on that document. And they're really built around users' expectations, not technology expectations. So there are things like when I go to click on a document the very first time, how long it takes for that document to respond to that click, first input delay. The things like when I go to manipulate a document or I'm taking a look at a document, how much does it move around on its own? We all have seen those very frustrating experiences when you go to click on something and it moves independently of your own action. It really does break the illusion that you're in control of the computer. And so layout shift, cumulative layout shift is a metric designed to represent that frustration for end users. And so these metrics are really designed around how people interact with machines and trying to find a common way to express what a decent experience is. And hopefully something that most websites can achieve.
How do people, or what's your advice for newbies who are trying to get even just a little bit better web performance? What are some common gotchas or things to consider?
Yeah, there's all sorts of really fun ones to do. You can go deep, right? You can go deep in a very specific space. As someone who's written a lot of React code in a previous life, my first instinct probably would be to go examine my JavaScript, right? Really try to figure out what's going on, why something is a super long task unexpectedly. But that's too deep to start. And so the generic advice is to start simple. Load your document with emulated slow settings in a local environment. Those emulated slow settings allow you to see things that you normally wouldn't see because your hardware is so powerful. And start there. See what the user sees on a lower end device. Gain empathy and understanding of what's going on for end users that don't have the exact same characteristics that your device has. And start there. If you do those things and you start to make those parts of the experience better, the metrics follow. It's not something you should be shooting for to say, I want to make my CLS less than 0.1. Instead, the idea is shoot for a good experience, see what users see, and the metrics should follow along the way. However, really simple, basic advice to start with, make sure your images have the right width and height attributes. It's a very small suggestion, but a very impactful one. Without a default width and height, an image doesn't have a defined size as the parser is evaluating your HTML by default. And so it doesn't know what size rectangle to draw for it. Once it starts to realize how big that rectangle is, it needs to push other things out of the way to give it space to be there. So start with just defining the width and height attributes on your images. That's a very simple one. There's a lot of other very simple things along those lines to start with. Image compression, make sure your server is actually using Brotli compression for your resources. And from there, it gets more complex quickly. And that's where the power of frameworks come in. These things are complex tasks, but frameworks can start to abstract those problems away. So for instance, Next.js has a great set of integrations to help you meet core web vitals more consistently. So do other frameworks as well. There's not one framework to rule them all when it comes to these metrics.
That's great. I feel like I'm going to learn a lot of stuff. I want to open it up to the group and ask how do you go about thinking about performance in your work? Are there any tools that you're using? And how important is it to you in what you're doing on a day-to-day basis?
Let's go ahead.
Go ahead, Debbie.
Yeah. So hi. So actually, I've just finished writing a talk, literally on performance that I'm speaking next week at a conference on, and specifically on image performance. So literally just what Christopher said there. And I actually went, and through the talk I go through it, where I got my website and showed the difference of before and after, even just putting the width and height of an image, something that I wasn't even doing myself because, you know, sometimes you're just too lazy and you want to create a blog post, you want to put something up and you don't think about it and you get that image from Unsplash and it's like 4,000 by something else. And it's like, you know, a small thing in your website and that's killing the user experience. And we're all at fault. So we all make mistakes. And one of the best tools I use is webpagetest.org. And they've had a makeover recently and it's actually really beautiful. Before it was really ugly and I've been using it for years and now it's actually really nice. And you can just put your website in there and press the button and it's just going to give you all the web core vitals. It's going to give you the waterfall so you can actually see. And I was testing it out and my images were like this. There was no waterfall going down. It was like, oh my God, terrible. And when you actually see it, and then like from there, I saw I had like cumulative layout shift as well. And I was able to see like my fonts were doing that. So I was able to try and fix that. But using the tool like Web Page Test, it's really, really good tool because you can analyze everything. You can see, like, I think when I did it, my images were 90% of my page about my blog post. And I'm like, what? 90%? I'm not selling like NFTs or something here. What's going on, right? So yeah, test. A lot of people as well, when they're doing like the Lighthouse test, they test the homepage. You get 100, 100, 100, 100. You go, yes, I have the most performant website. You walk away and happy days. And that's like the most simplest page. Test the page that has the most images. Test the page that generally has the most JavaScript, like, you know, something that's really kind of interactive. They're the pages you need to be testing and keep running your tests quite a lot, but definitely recommend webpagetest.org.
Yeah, that's a really good one. And I like that you said to test out the hard pages, because I know in the beginning when I was first coding, I would use things and I knew it was going to perform really well because it was just like maybe a page of text. And I knew it would perform really well. And I just didn't want the system to tell me that I was doing things poorly. So I didn't do that. And I didn't do a lot of the stuff that Chris is saying, like test it locally under different environments too, like try it with very low speeds and things like that. So I think that's an important call out. Lens.
And something to add to that, sorry. Also, when you're doing your tests, don't run it on your Chrome with all like the extensions that you have and the Chrome extension and stuff, because you're going to get like terrible results. Like I have a new profile, it's just for testing. And I open that up and that like profile is just my testing one, just for performance. It's called performance. And I go to that when I want to run the performance tests. And that's really helpful as well.
That's a really good idea. Thank you for that. Lens.
Yeah, I think this slow everything down tip is really super important, and I can't stress that enough, because we had a sudden change in our user base. We were developing an application that was just running on company computers, on the company network, and was just being used internally. And suddenly, I don't know if you noticed, these people are suddenly working from home, and they're using some suboptimal VPN, and they have like not always the best laptops, but whatever the company could get in a fast amount of time, because those people had to get that easily. So we came from a point where we thought like performance in this doesn't really count, because we know what our users are using. We know what hardware they have. We know what network they have. This is an internal application. We don't have to really look too much for that. And suddenly that changed. And only by having video conferences with our users, really looking over their shoulder, we really understood how their VPN speeds impacted them, how we could help them by adding stuff like optimistic updates, like not going the full round trip, but already making the change visible before it actually happened on the server, because that saves like a second or two for every second click for these people. So even if you feel secure, and even if you think you don't need that, it will bite you. Just think of that from the start.
That's great. Yeah, especially as we're all mostly global organizations, or people, we have users worldwide. It's important to think of the people who don't necessarily have the same speeds as you, or the same hardware as you. So I love that call out. David.
Lowering my hand. Thank you. Man, too many things. So just a lot of thoughts. And the first one, and a bullet point of list that I have right here, is one, like performance can be very overwhelming when you're getting started out. And just remember that it's a gradient, it's a scale. And there's some simple things. I love where Chris started, giving some simple tips, like, and even using a framework, like those things will help you learn what performance is, but you don't have to get it all right out of the box. And you first will need to identify who your users are and what performance means to them. Because performance, although page load time, especially your homepage, is a great indicator of other things in performance, there's so much to performance beyond that. So you need to understand who your users are, which is a good practice anyway, but then to understand what performance means for them and try to identify what those benchmarks of good enough are. If you're not monitoring, I don't know how you can actually identify what performance is for your end users. So I think there's a whole other side of this. And again, adding complexity when I'm urging simplicity, infrastructure, using tools for performance monitoring that are global tools. Pingdom was something I had success with in the last startup that I did for user experience monitoring. You need to try and use tools to determine what performance is being experienced by end users, and also what kind of performance that they expect. So as a framework developer, these things are all important because there's only so much we can do to guide people on a golden path. But you just have to build these skills and capacities as you go, and you don't have to get them all right out of the gate. But yeah, create those feedback loops. Lastly, I highly recommend, because you got to maintain these things, right? And you've got to maintain them across all browsers and screen widths and performance and all this stuff. So if you can come up with some kind of design library, Redwood ships with Storybook. We have accessibility add-ons that ship out of the gate. And if you can create some kind of team process for thinking about performance and benchmarks and your standards, that's a lot that will set you up for long-term maintainability in some ways that are really helpful down the road, because I'll just stop there. So I hope some of that was helpful, but it really is all encompassing. I think it really matters, but just remember that Google's end users are not your end users, right? So yours is a much smaller scope and set, and you can find what their needs are and meet those needs probably in some really simple ways out of the gate if you identify them. End soapbox.
I was going to ask a follow-up question too. So what are some of the metrics that you use? I think you said, is Pingdom that's the name of the system that you're using? What
Yeah.
are some of the metrics? So just some examples of things that you're measuring.
Yeah. Okay, I'm trying to think of some obvious ones. So outside of page load time, Pingdom itself had, I think they're a good example. They had their own user experience metrics that they had, but they would try to simulate going from page to page, right? So what is not just your initial load time, but then interacting. Let me think about a better answer to that. And then I'll come back with, because I think other people are going to have some metrics that they could suggest as well that aren't just about page load time.
Awesome. Love that. Hey, Colby.
Hey, so yeah, I also wanted to make the point kind of further on tooling is not only seeing the overall picture, but once you identify that there is a problem, really trying to focus on finding where that bottleneck is, using some of the tools that we have, as well as things like dev tools, where you can really start to inspect the overall loading process. Because you can go on Google and search for, speed up your React application and get a billion things, but that might not necessarily pertain to your problem that you're trying to fix. And also, a lot of people don't have the same problems that a framework or library maintainer might have with an actual, standard application.
Yeah, that's an amazing point, right? Like there are so many different things that you can measure, and you can drive yourself kind of nuts trying to keep up with every single bit of performance. So I know it'll vary from project to project, company to company, and user to user. So that's a great point. Hey, Ward.
I want to start with another resource that you can use. It's like web.dev, because I've seen that they have many articles and like code examples of like how can you optimize your builds and everything. It might be more complex for a lot of people, but if you have, like, if you want to go in the nitty gritty, I think they do a fairly good explanation on how things work, like how could you optimize your Webpack bundles and so on. Like frameworks do it all for you, but sometimes you don't have that luxury. And then you could just look at, okay, I have, for example, I have a Lodash used, but I only use one function about it. And then they show you how you can use a Babel plugin to basically strip everything away, those kind of small things. And then if we go back to like metrics, like the core web vitals are great, but sometimes like what David already said is you might have your own metrics or going from page to page. Do you have APIs like performance.mark and performance.measure in all the evergreen browsers? And you might come up with your own metrics, like when they click on something, how long does it take until the next render happens, or when a pop-up comes in, those kind of things. And I know WebPageTest picks them up automatically and shows them. And I think those are also great ways to find your niche, because I think in the past, and maybe it still exists, is like time to first tweet was a good example. It's basically LCP right now, but it's like a good example of like, okay, for Twitter, the tweet was the most important thing. So they optimized it the most, and then I think you have to find those cases for your website too. And then last thing, but I kind of forgot it, so it might come up later in this session.
Feel free to pop back up if you think of it.
I'll also just go to say, I posted web.dev in the channel or in the comments. So if you need the link there, but I'll also just say that it's really amazing because it does break down like how speed index is calculated, every single description. So if you're looking at your Lighthouse score and you're like, what on earth is all this information? Web.dev is amazing. Also, I posted Lighthouse scoring calculator, which is one of my favorite tools as well. And it'll tell you like how things are weighted and what it means so that you can optimize instead of like micro optimizing and, kind of trying to guess like, okay, if I do this, if I do that, like, what does it actually mean? So that's kind of a cool tool that I love. Also produced by Google. Thank you.
Actually, I have a question. I don't know the answer to. Why is it if I'm building like a Next.js site, right? And then I am developing locally, my Lighthouse score will be drastically worse than if I host it on Netlify and then do the same test of the same page. Does anybody know the answer to that? Why it's different?
Wait, say that again. Sorry.
If I'm building like a little Next.js site for myself, if I'm running locally, localhost 8,000, and I do my Lighthouse performance review, it will, like, my Lighthouse scores will be drastically way more terrible than they would be if I pushed it out to like Netlify, and then I just like see, okay, it's shonday.com, and then I do the same Lighthouse report. It will be like 100%, 100%, 100%.
If you don't mind, I might want to take a stab at some of this.
Okay.
So it's really important to understand the difference between field metrics and lab metrics. And this is not exactly that question, but it kind of gets to that question at the end. So the source of truth for metrics for how a website is performing is not how fast it is on your local dev environment or how fast it is when you contact your Netlify server. The source of truth for how fast something is how real end users interact with that thing. So metrics that are derived from synthetic tests like Lighthouse and other tools are really great for understanding the difference between one PR and another, for instance. So if I'm operating locally and I'm trying to understand the difference when I hoist a function versus not hoist a function in terms of total blocking time, that's what is great about Lighthouse and local development tools. I can understand that difference at that level. However, for end users, what really matters is when they visit the page, how does it operate? And that's the source of truth that matters most in the real world. And so starting with the field metrics is really important. And then if you want to understand how to improve field metrics using the synthetic testing tools and environments to improve those piecemeal, and then make sure that those results also apply in the real world is important. But it speaks to a little bit to your example here too. Your local server when running a Next.js environment or another development environment may need to do more complex work to serve a document, for instance, which could impact the time to first byte. A slower time to first byte will definitely impact your largest contentful paint. It could also impact things like first input delay, because maybe your server is so busy and it's single threaded that it can't deliver a JavaScript resource at the same time. There's all sorts of factors that happen locally that are very different than what happened when that site is deployed outside of your local environment. So if you're trying to understand performance of your site and you're working locally, it's great to compare locally between one thing and another for very specific purposes. If you want to understand the delta in performance between a PR and another PR, deploying and testing using synthetic tools against those deployed PRs is great. But if you want to understand how it's actually performing, how real users see your site or interactions on your site, then you need to have field data coming in from RUM tools like were mentioned before, or even most preferably from something like PageSpeed Insights, which gets its data from Crux, which is Chrome user experience data. Sorry, I was a little long-winded, but hopefully it answered a bit of the question.
Yeah, I just want to tie back into the question. Ward and Lens have much smarter things to say after me, but real quick, that's to answer the question earlier, what metrics are of help. This is why I need to think about it. It's trends over time. So it's not a specific metric. It's looking at trends over time and noticing what happens to the user experience at scale. And the only way you can get that is I like field data. That's going to be a new term I'm going to try to use, Chris. Thank you. But I have to be monitoring for the end user experience. And right, so you don't get that unless you're watching and paying attention to those changes over time and what happens at scale. And that's what those tails can do. But if you really want to get your brain, this is the infrastructure part. I've deployed the same app on Netlify and Vercel, database, same location, everything same geolocation, and I get different Lighthouse scores there. So the infrastructure matters as well. And again, so all these things are going to be a moving target. You need to define your benchmarks and your constraints because there's not one thing. Okay.
Also, just to add on top of that, there's also some of the libraries perform different optimizations, and kind of to Chris's point, it does more work when serving it locally as opposed to the already precompiled file that you're going to get served straight from Netlify.
It's like the React dev mode versus, React production mode.
Yes.
Yeah, I wanted to pile onto that too, because like I can say it from a Redux toolkit. When you launch it in dev mode, we add middlewares that like try to catch your programmer errors. You put a new object in state, we will go recursively through that whole thing and check everything, is it serializable and everything, to warn you. But we've come to the point where we actually had to measure the time that we are taking to measure things, to warn you in the end to turn off our check because your data is too big for it, which is totally weird. But we had that point, and now if it takes longer than I think 32 milliseconds, which is already 2 frames for something that should never happen in production, you will get a warning. This now feels a lot more sluggish than in production, and please turn that check off. Because it's just not doing for you what it should do. So that's super important. And I think that this dev environment thing, like many people are measuring the wrong thing and in the wrong place. Many people never think of, I measure the production build. Many people also never think of, I really measure with a profiler. There are, especially when it comes to React, many people just like using console log and counting renders, and then like, why is this rendering twice and this is rendering 3 times? And all that will not get you performance. That render might occur 10,000 times and not have any impact, or it occurs twice and has an huge impact. So like, especially for stuff like that, you need the profiler, you need to get to know those tools, and you need to step back from time to time, and not every big number is immediately scary or immediately dangerous. Some of them are also just okay, or how your framework works.
That's awesome. Great points. We have time for just one more. Ward.
I remembered what I wanted to say, and it's basically like the real user monitoring, the field data. It could be very scary for people to implement it, but you could easily get it to work with Google Analytics. It might not be the best because it's mostly aggregated, but it gets you a long way by just adding like custom metrics, because the browser actually gives you a lot of metrics, like from like you have I think it's performance.get timings or Chrome timings. I don't remember, but you can get a lot of those. And also Chrome user report. I don't know how if I said it correctly, like Crux. There's a lot of automatically getting data from browsers if you have a fairly visited website. I don't remember what the metrics are to be in Crux. But at least when you run a web page test or a lighthouse, you get like real user monitoring. And then it scores about like 60% have a good LCP, or 20% have a okay LCP, and then like the rest I forgot where I'm at the 100% scale. The rest is poor, and then you can also see like, oh, I actually am doing well or not for my users.
That's a great tip. Yeah, and we can end on that note. So Tracy, I'm going to pass it off to you.
Yeah. Just wanted to say thanks all for joining. Sorry for the technical difficulties in the beginning. You know, we do so many live events. I feel like this is like the first weird live streaming issue that we had. So I'm happy, but apologies for the users who had to kind of jump from one YouTube link to another. Conversation definitely doesn't have to stop here. You can actually go to reactjsmeetup.com. You'll see this event and you'll see everybody who joined this. Everybody's Twitter handles are also on there. So if you want to follow them and again, continue the conversation on Twitter, definitely do so. If you're not on Twitter, highly recommend you join. You know, thank you everyone who participated in the chats and the comments. Hope to see some of y'all participating a little bit more as well in the React working group GitHub repos. Thank you so much, working group folks, for being a part of that and bringing your energy. And thank you everyone as well for joining. And